Okay, everybody, it's 11:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just remember as you're coming in to keep your microphones muted. Um, just want to say welcome to everybody today. And as we continue to make Lunch and Learns and other live presentations accessible to individuals of all abilities, the staff and provider engagement team would like to share how to access live captions during a Teams meeting. To access live captions during a Teams meeting, navigate to the ribbon at the top of the screen. Select More, denoted by 3 dots. Scroll down to Language and Speech, and then select Show Live Captions. To set live captions for all Teams meetings, navigate to the ribbon at the top of the screen. Select More, denoted by 3 dots. Scroll down to Settings. Select Accessibility. Click the button indicating Always Show Captions in My Meetings. This will allow for live captioning to be shown in every Teams meeting you join. Please reach out to Emily Greer at emily.greer@tn.gov with any questions. And I will also put these instructions in the chat in a few minutes. Again, as you're joining, just remember to remain muted. If you need to ask a question or would like to ask a question during the presentation today, we ask that you put those questions in the chat and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. And we ask that you also only use the chat to ask those questions in order to help us maintain those ADA guidelines. We ask that you just use those the chat for those questions and not any side conversations. You will have an opportunity to see the contact information for our presenter today. It will be in her presentation, and I'll also put her email in the chat as well. Let's see. So the recording for today's presentation will be found on the community resource website, and I will also put that link in the chat in a few minutes, and that will be available within the next few days. So today we have Catherine Williams with us again. She's the Director of West Tennessee Services for TN STEP, and I'm going to turn it over to Catherine to get started.
Thank you so much. So we're going to pretty much jump right in because we do have a lot to cover today, but I did want to make sure if everyone can see the screen and it's showing clearly. Okay, perfect.
Yes, it is.
Right. So welcome everyone. I'm very excited today because this is a topic that and questions that I get a lot from families. Especially when they're navigating what services or supports may work best for their child. And so to be able to go over this today, it's going to be very important to really look at the two side by side and see how they differ, and then also see some of the things that are similar. So as she shared, my name is Catherine Williams. I am the Director of West Tennessee Services for TN STEP, and TN STEP stands for Tennessee Support and Training for Exceptional Parents. I have been with TN STEP for about 2 years. I've been in the special education field for many years. And today's topic is very close to my heart because I am, excuse me, I am the parent of a high school graduate who had a 504 plan all throughout high school. And I had to heavily advocate for her to make sure she received the right supports and accommodations. And so many parents will wonder, I don't know which one to choose for my child. And so my hope is that today you will learn something that will help you ask some of the right questions and make some better decisions when it comes to your child's education. So before we get directly into the topics, I did want to share information about TN STEP. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, and TN STEP was started in 1989, and the sole purpose is to serve families in the state of Tennessee. We are Tennessee's Parent Training and Information Center. And the ways that we help are by helping Tennessee families and caregivers of children and youth from birth all the way up until life after high school, age 26. And so children and youth and young adults with diagnosed or suspected disabilities, also special health care needs, and also mental health needs as well. And so our belief at TN Step is that parents and caregivers are a child's best advocate. So we are going to start with an activity, and we're going to play a game. I like to call it Alphabet Soup. So when you are thinking about special education or any sort of supports or services within education, a lot of times you will come across all these letters and you do not know what these letters stand for. And so we're just going to pick out a few. And this is not an exhaustive list at all, but we do have a large list of acronyms on our website, and I'll provide that information. But as I go through and I put up the letters, I would like you to type in the chat what you think those letters mean, and then we will see if you got it right. Guess, it's okay. I don't even know all the acronyms all the time, but we'll see if you all are able to know some of these or guess what they are. So I'll put up the first one. So the first one is SPED. And so if you think you know what SPED stands for, please put that into the chat. So SPED, anything that you think that could stand for. Yes, and you all are correct. So SPED is special education. So this is that extra support for students with disabilities to help them succeed in school. The next one is IEP. So if you could put in the chat what IEP stands for. Yes, almost. So I used to mix this up all the time. A lot of people think individualized education plan, but it's actually individualized education program. So it's just a little bit of a wording difference, and especially coming from the early intervention background, when you say see IFSP and that P stands for plan, it's a common mistake that people make. But IEP stands for individualized education program. And this is that legal plan that has all the goals, the services, and supports for eligible students in that educational setting. The next one is TDOE. So if you know what TDOE, what those letters stand for, I'll give you a hint. The T stands for the state that we live in. Yep, you all are awesome. Y'all are correct. Tennessee Department of Education, so the state agency that oversees schools and special education. All right, and SLP, a hint for this one, and many of you probably know this one, but a hint for this one is one of the services a child could need if they have communication concerns or needs. Yep, so SLP stands for speech language pathologist. So they're supporting the child's speech, their language, and their communication skills. And then we have one more. This one may be a little bit tricky. OCR. So does anyone know what OCR stands for? And I'm trying to think of a hint, but I can't really think of it. Yes, perfect. So Joni is correct. OCR stands for Office of Civil Rights. So this is the office that handles disability discrimination complaints under Section 504. And we will be going into a little bit more detail about that today. So you all did amazing. All right. So now we will go over what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn about the differences between IEPs and 504 plans. We'll also learn what each plan provides, the process and eligibility criteria for each plan, informational resources and advocacy tips, and oh, I thought we had one more. So those are the 4 things that we will be learning about today. So we do have to start with another acronym. What is FAPE? And if you have not heard of FAPE before, FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. So this means that your child has a right to an education at no cost. They also have a right to support that meets their unique and specific learning needs, and also a right to those supports that can help them make progress. So FAPE may look a little bit differently for a child who has an individualized education program or IEP versus a child who has a 504 plan. So for students with an IEP, FAPE includes special education and related services tailored to their individual goals. So those related services could be speech therapy or occupational therapy. For a student with a 504 plan, FAPE means equal access to learning through accommodations that support their participation in the general education setting. So they are a little bit different, but of course, you are still looking at having that child have access to that free and appropriate public education. So, what is an IEP or individualized education program? An IEP is a legal plan for students who qualify for special education services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it lists out the services, the supports, and goals that are based on what that child needs to learn and make progress. So, we're going to go over the key parts of the IEP, the key sections. So the first one is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. And this is just a snapshot of where the child is now academically and functionally. It's kind of similar to the present levels of development for a child who was on an IFSP. So it explains their strengths, and then it also explains some of the areas that they still need to work on. And then there's the goals. So these are those specific skills that the child will be working on over the course of the year. They should be measurable and they should be tied to the child's needs. There also is specialized instruction and intervention. So this could be direct teaching or strategies used to help the child make progress, as well as accommodations. So any extra support that they may need, like extra time or visual schedules. The related services would be speech, OT, PT, counseling, and then the placement area would describe where your child would be receiving services. Would it be in the general education classroom? Would it be more in a self-contained classroom? Would they go to a resource room? Would it be a mixture? All that information would be under placement. But you do want to make sure that the child is in their least restrictive environment. So you want to make sure that they are with their same age peers or their classroom peers as much as possible while receiving the support that they need. And then there are sections for transition for older students. There also are sections about parent notification, when the annual review will happen, when progress monitoring would be done, and then also if a child is eligible for what's called extended school year, that information would be in there as well. So this is a chart of the steps in the IEP process. This is the typical step process. It may look a little bit different for families transitioning from TEIS, especially at the beginning part, because typically you would work with your service coordinator and everything like that. But starting from the yellow section, that should pretty much be consistent. So a child could be referred through a referral by a parent, through child find, through a screening. There would be a possible written referral request from the parent. And then they would go into informed consent. So the parent must be informed that the evaluation is going to take place, and they would give that permission for it to happen. Then the evaluation would take place. And if the child is eligible, all of that would be covered at an eligibility meeting. So the team would go over all the findings and the team would determine if the child is eligible for services. If they are, then the IEP would be developed and then a meeting would happen to go over all of that information and the IEP would be implemented. So there's a lot of steps that go into it, but it's just nice to see it all laid out. And then also on our website, and I'll provide that information at the end, we do have one pagers on the eligibility process, and it goes into a lot more detail. So, as I mentioned earlier, the school must have your written consent before starting an evaluation. So, evaluations, they need to look at all areas that could affect the child's learning: communication, behavior, academics, motor. So, it's not just academics only. You also should be looking at other areas that could impact the child's education. And the evaluation should be done by a team of qualified professionals. And once you give your consent, the school has 60 calendar days to complete the evaluation. And then just a note that a re-evaluation, if the child is found eligible, a re-evaluation should be happening at least every 3 years to ensure that that child still has the right supports. So for example, the supports a child may have had in kindergarten may not be the same supports that they may need in second or third grade. So to qualify for an IEP under IDEA, we do have to kind of understand what IDEA is, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So this is that federal law that makes sure that students who have disabilities have access to FAPE, free and appropriate public education. So this is how it all kind of ties together to even think about how that child can have the support in the classroom. So as far as eligibility criteria, the child must have a disability listed under IDEA, and we will go over some of those disability categories in a minute. Secondly, the disability must impact their ability to learn or succeed at school. So it's important to remember it is not just about the disability category and diagnosis. That is not the full picture. We need a diagnosis, but we also need it to affect their ability to learn and succeed at school. And so that's where the team comes in and makes those determinations. And then the child must need special education and related services in order to help them progress and meet those needs at school. And it's just important to remember the parents, you are part of the IEP team. So when I say the team makes those eligibility determinations, your input and your advocacy is very important at those meetings. And then if the child is eligible, the team will begin developing the IEP, and the IEP must be written and implemented within 30 calendar days of the eligibility decision. So in Tennessee, there are 16 eligibility categories under IDEA. 14 are federal categories and 2 are state no talk today. 2 are state specific. So one of them is functional delay. That is one of the state ones. And then the other state specific one is intellectually gifted. And so the categories, many of them are self-explanatory, but I did want to go over a couple that sometimes people often have questions about. So emotional disturbance, so that might be ongoing emotional or behavioral challenges. Functional delay, that is one that could be focusing on significant learning or daily skill delays. And then another one that often comes up is other health impairment. So this could be conditions such as ADHD or something that could affect the child's focus or alertness or stamina. So these are often questions that we'll get about different areas and what those areas specifically mean. So a lot of times as well, autism is typically one of the eligibility categories or speech language impairment. And then especially for the little ones, developmental delay is also one that typically little ones are categorized under, but that could change as they get older as well. And there is a certain timeline for developmental delay. So once they get to a certain age, they would possibly need another evaluation to see if they continue to qualify under developmental delay or if they would qualify in another category. All right, so we are going to pause for a little bit to just reflect on a question because this is a lot of information. And we've talked about the IEP, and then after this, we're going to talk about the 504 plan in more detail. So I would like to know, what is one word that describes what a student needs to thrive at school? And so thinking more than ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but thinking more so about what support they may need, what relationship may be important, how would the environment, maybe how does that need to be set up? So if you can share your one word that describes what a student needs to thrive at school in the chat, that would be great. And then we will go over a few of those. For me, I think a big one would be safety. And probably consistency as well. So a lot of times, especially the little ones, feeling safe at school helps them to be able to fully engage and learn better, and having consistency. So the same environment, seeing the same friends, having the same routine, all of that can help them to feel safe as well.
Okay, Catherine, in the chat, we have emotional safety, love, structure, IEP, accommodations, respect, structure again, love, routine, emotional safety, consistency, security, confidence, safety, understanding. Let's see, encouragement, a lot of consistency, accommodation, routine,
Sure.
acceptance, appropriateness, relationships, access, and love.
Awesome. Yes, I definitely agree with all of those, especially the love part and the acceptance part. That is great, especially for the little guys, just making sure that they feel comfortable in their environment and they feel like they should be there and they are more willing to learn and things like that. So that is perfect. Thank you. Okay. So now we are going to shift and talk about what is Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So Section 504 is a civil rights law. It is not a special education law. So it protects students with disabilities from discrimination, and it makes sure that they have equal access to school programs and activities. So this law requires schools to identify students who may have a disability and also provide accommodations and supports if those are needed. And the goal is really to make sure that the student can fully participate in learning and school life, just as their peers. And so the quote on the side in the yellow box, this comes directly from Section 504. And I wanted to read it because it's an important reminder of what this is really about. So access to fairness and access to the same support that other children will receive. So no otherwise qualified handicapped individual shall solely by reason of handicap be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So this is just a very important reminder that it is about access, making sure there's equal access to those learning, those activities, all of the same things that their peers would have access to. So the 504 plan process, again, it may look a little bit different in the beginning for a child who is transitioning from TEIS. But typically it starts with a referral. A lot of times for children who are in elementary school, the pre-referral intervention will often happen. So maybe the teacher notices that the child is continually having some difficulty in a certain area. And so the school gets together and they talk about that and they will implement some interventions. So these interventions are not connected to an IEP or a 504 plan. They are just specific interventions that the school is trying out, such as small groups or more one-on-one support from the teacher, something that can help the child, and they have a little bit more data to see if that's enough or if the child needs more support. And also the parents would be notified. So there would be a notice to parent where the school would provide written notice of the intent to evaluate, the reason for evaluating, the description, and then the parent rights as well. Written consent is not required by the parent under Section 504, but a lot of schools will consider written consent best practice. It's just not required by the law. And then after the parent is notified and possible written consent is received, an evaluation would be conducted, and that evaluation has to be done before any sort of placement or significant changes in placement or plan implementation. The service plan would be written, and it would include parent input. The evaluation could include a myriad of things. It could be teacher report, parent report. There could be some specific testing that was done. It can come from multiple areas. And then the plan would be implemented, and there would be a periodic review of the plan and accommodations. So who qualifies for a 504 plan? To qualify for a 504 plan, a student has to meet two main criteria. So first, they must have a physical or mental impairment. Second, that impairment must substantially limit one or more major life activities. So major life activities could include things such as learning, focusing, walking, breathing, communicating. Remembering that Section 504 is a civil rights law, so it's about that access to equal opportunity, and all of those things, major life activities, are needed in order to have that access. So we're going to go over the major life activities in a little bit more detail now. So as I shared before, major life activities can include things that are essential to daily living, essential to learning. So reading, writing, walking, seeing, all these things that a lot of times we will do and we're not necessarily thinking about doing them, even eating or sleeping. So bodily functions like neurological or respiratory systems, they also can be considered when deciding if a student qualifies for a 504 plan. So Section 504 does require schools to evaluate any student who may have a disability and need those accommodations. And those evaluations, they should be using valid and appropriate tools to gather information from across multiple sources. So academic data, teacher input, medical reports, parent feedback. And then, of course, the team would make that eligibility decision. Re-evaluations, if that child is found eligible, re-evaluations are done periodically and before any significant changes. And most Tennessee districts interpret periodic as doing a review about once a year and a re-evaluation about every 3 years. similar to the IEP timelines. It's not a legal requirement, but again, it is typically considered best practice. And if you're not sure how often your child's 504 plan is reviewed or updated, this is where being a parent advocate comes in, not hesitating to ask the school what their timeline looks like, not hesitating to request a review when you feel your child needs additional support. That is part of your rights. So the key parts of the 504 plan, each 504 plan has basic information like student information. There also would be information on how the disability that the child has impacts their learning or participation. There will also be information about the accommodations and supports your child would need, as well as who would be responsible for implementing these supports as well. And then there will be information on the review and any sort of reevaluation plans for the future. And then, of course, parent participation and signatures. So a lot of times people will confuse or kind of cross over accommodations and modifications, thinking that they are the same or similar, but they do have some differences. So accommodations are changes to how a student learns or shows what they know. So this could be breaks, it could be extended time, it could be a visual schedule, and accommodations are used in both IEPs and 504 plans. But modifications go a little bit further. So they change what the student is expected to learn. So this could mean adjusting the curriculum or modifying the curriculum so that the student is able to complete it a little bit better. And so modifications are only part of the IEP. They are not part of a 504 plan. So many times families will contact us because their child may have an IEP or they may have a 504 plan, or there may be some behaviors that keep happening in the classroom or at school. So I wanted to go over how behavior support can look in an IEP versus a 504 plan. So both of those plans can include behavior support, but they can work a little bit differently sometimes. So with an IEP, support can come through services or it can come through a formal behavior plan. And so when I say services, that could be counseling services. There could be, some schools have like behavioral small groups that will meet a couple times a week or something like that. And so it's just important to know how that could possibly look in the IEP. If there is a behavior that continually keeps happening and it's affecting the child, it's affecting other students, the school should complete what's called a functional behavior assessment, or FBA, if that behavior is affecting the child's learning. So students do have strong discipline protections with IEPs, and so those discipline protections can happen if the student is removed from that school setting for more than 10 days. A manifestation determination review would be required. And so what that is a meeting to decide if the behavior was caused by the student's disability. And just to note, when we say removed, that could mean suspended, expelled, or placed in another setting due to their behavior. And then under a 504 plan, behavior support usually comes through accommodations. An FBA, the functional behavior assessment, is not required, but it could still be done if that is what is needed. And those same discipline protections would apply as well. So what are your rights with an IEP versus a 504? So this is just nice to see it all in one place as far as your rights. And so we will go through each one of these. Some of these we have already talked about, but it's just a good reminder to keep hearing it over and over again. That way you start to learn what your rights are and what is expected. So with written notice, with the IEP, written notice is required before evaluations or placement or changes, and you should receive what is called a prior written notice. So what is being changed or proposed would be in that prior written notice and the reason why that decision was made. For the 504 plan, notice is required before any evaluations or placement changes. As far as parent participation, it is required for all major decisions for the IEP, and for the 504 plan, they need to be given an opportunity to participate. As far as consent, it is required with the IEP, the written consent. For the 504 plan, it is not required by law, but schools will typically go ahead and get written consent. Both have access to records with the IEP. This would be under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Under the 504 plan, your access to records would be under FERPA only. And then there is what's called an independent educational evaluation. So if the school completes the evaluation for the IEP, the parent, if they disagree with those evaluation findings, they have a right to request an IEE at public expense if they disagree with the school's findings. For the 504 plan, there's no right to an IEE at public expense, but as a parent, you can seek out a private evaluation, and the school is legally required to consider those outside evaluations, but they still can determine that the child is eligible or not eligible, but they need to provide specific reasoning of why and data and be able to back up their decision with that information. There is a formal dispute process for both the IEP and 504 plan. So with the IEP, there's things such as mediation or due process hearings. There's also the administrative or state complaint system. For the 504 plan, any complaints would go through the OCR or Office of Civil Rights. And then as far as your parent rights and knowing your procedural safeguards, under the IEP, you must receive notice and be giving that information at least once per year. Typically, when I'm in meetings with families, it's offered to them at every meeting. It does have to at least be offered to you at least once a year. And then for the 504 plan, the school must provide a notice of your rights, but there is no set timeline. But again, typically in those meetings, they will go ahead and offer it to the parent, and the parent can accept it or decline it. So the big question, IEP or 504 plan, which one should I choose for my child? So both plans do support students with disabilities. It's just in different ways. So a 504 plan, this may be right for your child if they are able to participate in general education, but they need some accommodations to fully access their learning. The IEP may be a right fit for your child if that disability is really affecting how they are able to make progress. And if they don't have special instruction, if they don't have those supports such as speech therapy or behavioral supports, if they do not have that, then they would have difficulty in the classroom, then maybe the IEP may be a better fit for your child. The key difference is really to know whether accommodations alone are enough or do they need more intensive support. So we have gone over the differences between the IEP and the 504 plan. I know it was a lot of information, but I do want to kind of bring a real world scenario aspect into it. So we're going to play a game called This or That, and I'm going to read a short scenario, and I want you to think about whether this child would most likely receive support through an IEP or through a 504 plan. And so in the chat, just write IEP or write 504. So Taylor is a preschooler with an emotional behavioral disability. During unstructured play, Taylor sometimes becomes frustrated and may throw toys or attempt to hit peers. Taylor has also engaged in behaviors that could harm himself, such as banging their head. These behaviors significantly interfere with learning new skills and safely participating in classroom routines. So in the chat, write if you think Taylor, the preschooler with emotional behavioral disability, has a 504 plan or an IEP.
Most are saying IEP, but
Okay.
there's a couple of people that have guessed 504.
Okay.
Someone said get consent for FBA.
Yes, that would definitely be great for Taylor. Yes. So if you guessed IEP, you were correct. So most likely Taylor would have an IEP because Taylor requires specialized instruction and behavior intervention support. So that could be through the functional behavior assessment, or sorry, through the behavior intervention plan, or it could just be behavior support in the classroom to learn safe ways to manage frustration, engage with their peers, and access the preschool curriculum. So most of you guessed right on that one. So we're going to try another one. So our second one is Jordan is a preschooler with asthma. He participates in play and classroom activities, but sometimes needs to rest or use his inhaler when breathing becomes difficult. This impacts his ability to fully take part in active play and outdoor routines. So if you think that Jordan has a IEP, write that in the chat, or a 504 plan, write that in the chat.
Everyone is guessing 504.
Yep, and you all are correct. So Jordan has a 504 plan. He benefits from accommodations such as access to his inhaler, opportunities for rest breaks, and flexibility with those outdoor activities to make sure he can safely participate. And we have one more scenario. So Maya is a preschooler with autism. She enjoys building with blocks and playing in centers, but during circle time, she has difficulty attending to group instruction and often misses important directions. She is working on developing her communication skills for expressing wants and needs, which impacts her participation in early learning activities and interactions with peers. So do we think Maya has an IEP or a 504 plan? So type that in the chat.
Everyone is guessing IEP.
Perfect. Yes, you are correct. So Maya, she benefits from specialized instruction, visual supports, speech therapy, all of this to help strengthen her communication skills and support that engagement in those classroom routines. Perfect. So you all did a great job on those. All right, so we are going to wrap up, but I did just want to go over some reminders when it comes down to advocating for your child. So just remembering that you do have rights no matter which plan your child has. You do have a right to be part of the process, to ask questions. And if you remember nothing else, just remember it's okay to ask questions, to see records, to request evaluations or meetings at any time. And if something changes in your child's plan, you have the right to be informed. And if you don't necessarily agree with those changes, ask questions, advocate for your child to make sure you're understanding those decisions and why those decisions are being made. And so I know I mentioned earlier.
Good communication with the green card.
and bad communication with your everyone, please remember to mute. Yesterday, we read through.
So these are some of the resources that that would be beneficial for going over if you wanted to learn more about the IEP process. Excuse me. I'm going to mute for a quick second, Dawn.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I am just getting over being sick. Okay. So these are some resource links, and you can find them on our website. I would definitely recommend all of them, actually. But one that you may find helpful is the one for difference between IEPs and 504 plans. And then also on our YouTube, there is a new video up about the difference between IEPs and 504 plans. It's a short video and it's really great. And it just kind of pulls everything together about what we talked about today, including just to make it more understandable for you if you are going through this particular process. And you also can reach out to me at any time as well. My email is the first one under West Tennessee. We also have people in Middle Tennessee. We have a director of youth services as well. And so you can reach out to us at any time if you needed more information or had any questions at all. And I believe my email address is going to be put into the chat as well. And this is our website, tnstep.info. So all that information will be there, all of the handouts and resources that we talked about today. We also are on social media as well. And so anytime we have events and things like that, you will find that information there as well. You also can reach out to us at this email address, gethelp@tnstep.info, or on our website, there's a Get Support form you can fill out. And so that concludes our training. And so I would love if you all could complete the evaluation of today's training and just let us know what your thoughts were, if you would like to learn more. And you can use the QR code, and I believe the link will be in the chat as well. And now, since we do have some time left over, if anyone has any questions, now you can feel free to ask.
We do have one question in the chat, and it says, I apologize if I missed this or if I have, or if it is coming up, but is there an age difference in these? Can a 3-year-old have a 504 plan?
Yes. So if the child is in the public school system, then yes, they can have a 504 plan if they need those supports within the classroom.
Okay. There's another question that says, can a child have both a 504 and an IFSP?
So I have seen that done before, but typically, if a child, oh, do you mean an IFSP or an IEP?
That's what I was wondering too. Let's answer it at, well, she says an IFSP. So
no, they could not, because that would be the 504 plan is for receiving school age services. So if a child is still receiving an IFSP, that means they're still receiving early intervention, and you cannot receive early intervention and school services at the same time. It has to be one or the other.
Are there any more questions? Here's a couple. What is the location of the workshop?
You can just put Shelby County or Memphis. I'm not sure which one is on there.
Okay. And that was for the evaluation form. And then it says, what if they are in the extended option, but enrolled into VPK, voluntary
Yes,
pre-K?
that is a very good question. I do not know. I have not had that question asked before. I would have to find that information out. I'm sorry. I wish I knew that one. But
Can
that's
I
a
come off
very
mute?
good question. But I don't want to give inaccurate information. So actually, if you could send me your email address, I can find that information out and get that information out to you.
Catherine, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Shelby Ritter, the Regional Administrator for West
Huh.
Tennessee and TEIS. How are you?
Yes. Good. How are you?
Yes. So I think we all kind of put that in the same at the same time, because we know that we've actually discussed that with parents. Parents have had that question about,
Okay.
because you're allowed to enroll in VPK and LEA classrooms, but also have extended option services. So I'll email you, and that way we can connect. And when you get that
Yes.
guidance, if you could just send it over, and then I could share it.
Yes,
that
I
would be
can do that.
fabulous. That would be
Yes.
wonderful. We would love that. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Yes. And someone asked, but a 504 plan would be available for an average 3-year-old with an IEP. I think that's what they're asking.
If they have, so they should have one or the other. So if they have a disability and they are found eligible because that disability is impacting their education, the team would need to decide, do they need accommodations only, or do they need additional support from those related services?
Okay.
So that would ultimately be a team decision, but it more so boils down to what specifically does that child need to be successful in the classroom.
Okay. And the next question is, how long does an IEP 504 normally last on a child's record?
So the IEP should be reviewed annually, so at least once a year by law. That is the requirement. For the 504 plan, there's no requirement for the review. They just say it should be done within a timely manner. But again, typically the schools use the IEP guidelines for the 504. So it should be reviewed yearly, and then the child will be reevaluated every 3 years. So it's really just making sure that you have that conversation with the team and you're really on track with what is going to be offered, how many times it's going to be reviewed. If you are wondering if your child needs additional support, you can reach out and request that at any time.
Okay. And someone said they can have an IEP till age 21. I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement.
Yes, they can have an IEP until age 21 or 22 inclusive. So if a child turns 22 during the school year, they don't have to leave. They can stay, or the young adult can stay there until the end of the school year. But if they are still found eligible, they can continually receive those services up until that age. Yes.
Okay. And there were lots of thank yous and great presentation. Someone said this is one of the best presentations that I've heard on this subject matter. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Any more questions that anyone has? You can unmute or put it in the chat, either one. Again, some more. Thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and kind of give my little ending information. And then if there's more questions, we can certainly answer those because we still have more time. But the form stack link has been placed in the chat. It was up above some of these questions, so you might have to scroll up a little bit to find it. But the form stack link has been placed in the chat. Please be sure to complete the survey to receive your confirmation of attendance and to provide feedback. If you have any questions or issues regarding today's survey, please reach out to Emily Greer. Again, that's emily.greer@tn.gov. Catherine also has a survey. I put her survey link in the chat as well. It's right there. They're all right there together, kind of. So again, you'll have to scroll up a little bit to find it. Our next Lunch and Learn will be our final one for 2025. It's November the 19th from 11:30 to 12:30 Central. Kara Kumari, who's the Assistant Commissioner of Communications and External Affairs, will be speaking with us on the Department of Disability and Aging Programs and Services. Okay, so any more questions? We can kind of hang out for a little bit if anyone wants to unmute and ask or put it in the chat.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I had a child that was on an IEP. I struggled to get her on one, so she didn't actually receive one until she was about third grade. And I had issues throughout that time, but once she made it to ninth grade, the high school made it very hard, next to impossible, for her to keep her IEP. And I'm at the point where I got exhausted. I'm not even gonna lie. I want her back on it, and I'm trying to figure out, the best way to go about that. If I can directly just ask for an outside assessment of her, besides trying to sit down with people and being berated about what they don't want to do. Is it possible to just go straight forward to ask for the outside public assessment? Because their thing is, no, we're not saying she's not gifted. We're saying she no longer needs services, which she's literally told me yesterday she couldn't understand what the teacher was talking about because there's a certain way you have to say things to her.
So yes, to answer your question, you would first need to request the evaluation from the school in writing first. And then based on their evaluation findings, if you disagree with them, then you could request the independent evaluation, the IEE. So you do have to go through the school's evaluation first and then go over those findings. If you disagree, then you can do the outside evaluation covered by the school.
For further clarification, when they did well, it wasn't even really a vow. It was just them sitting down to tell me. I disagree with that, and they still discontinued it. So you're saying start the process all over again anyway?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Do a whole formal evaluation and then go from there. Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if you have this information because it doesn't really fall under, it's kind of like a building block for like RTIs. Do you know anything about like what the requirements are on those?
I do not know the requirements, but we do have some information on our website because what I have found is there are specific tiers to RTI, but I have found that schools implement them various ways, so that it doesn't always look the same. But if you did want to reach out to me directly and just let me know what specific things they have done, the data they've collected, how long it has been happening, what progress your child made, then I can help you a little bit more with that area.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Catherine's email is at the top of the chat, and as well as the link to the community resource website. And I did put the link to the FormStack form here at the bottom of the chat. So you should be able to find that pretty easily.
So for our survey there, Shannon, I don't think there's a place to put your email in on the TN STEP survey.
I think she might be talking about our survey. Okay. Shannon, if you're having trouble with the survey, if you could just email Emily and she will help you out with that. Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to go. I'll hang out for a few more minutes if anybody needs anything. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we will see you again on November 19th.
Thank you.